Uh, well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting, folks. Since I can't quite see, that's a challenge with this multi-screen management. When I see the full screen presentation on my part, I don't see all the chat room and everything else. So just bear with me. Uh, I'm going to go through the agenda quickly. And with that, first, today we have a very interesting speaker, Michael Dyment. He's the managing partner of NEXA Capital Partners. I'm not going to get into too much detail on the introduction myself with the company because I'm going to let Michael do the talking. But NEXA has a long record of success for multi-$100 million project finance in aerospace, and that's kind of unusual. We see capital investment operations in different part of the business or industries, but focus on the aerospace. That's with such a successful long listing of records. That's kind of impressive and unusual, I would say. Michael is very interesting. Prior to NEXA, he spent about 20 years as partner or national director with PricewaterhouseCoopers and Arthur Andersen and others. We all know that. And so I start wondering, what is his academic background? Well, there he is. He has a Master of Science in Aeronautic and Astronautic from MIT. Well, I'll go figure. I think he got smart, rather than dive 100% into technical. I think he got into the financial side of the business. And he also has a BS degree in geomatic engineering. Michael, I think I have to ask you to explain what is geomatic engineering. So, and following Michael's talk, I'm going to show one slide, just an update. We just got a 60-minute from CBS reporting on eVTOL. That was exciting. Very well done program. Very exciting. And if we have time, we're going to spend a few minutes talk about the future focus and roadmap updates. With that, I'm going to remove my slide and let Michael take over from here.
Very good. Thank you, Johnny, for that great introduction. Yes, I'm an engineer, but I went to the dark side, which is finance, about, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. And our NEXA Capital is an investment bank with a primary focus on aerospace opportunities, and so we tend to get involved in areas like advanced air mobility. We've done financings just in the last couple of years in this area, and it's a very exciting thing. One thing I can say about my business is that we get to choose which projects we want to work on, and we typically lean on things that catch our interest and our imagination. So it's kind of fun that way. And I'm going to be talking about hydrogen today because that is a very critical program for aviation, for aerospace, generally speaking. So let me just pull up my slides here. Can you all see this? It should have NEXA's name on the bottom and Federal H-2 Aero Programs and Private Capital.
Yep. I see it. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. So I actually, I'll be going through this presentation rather quickly. Then I have a second presentation to talk more specifically about a project that we are leading. But the reason for talking about the second topic is to emphasize the fact that innovation in hydrogen is happening very, very quickly. And the aerospace community needs the confidence of new technologies and approaches so that hydrogen is readily available at airports everywhere for refueling future aircraft, that sort of thing. So this set of slides is to talk about federal, meaning federal government, U.S. government, hydrogen aero programs, and I will touch on private capital at the end of it, because that's what we do as a private capital arranger for promising projects and companies. So you may have heard about the Clean Hydrogen Shot, which is a program that is coming out of the U.S. Department of Energy. It basically says that transportation needs to get moving on hydrogen as a fuel. And this is all modes of transportation. In fact, aviation is one of those modes that really was not strongly emphasized in the latest bills. I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. But what I've said for a number of years, and we continue to say here at NEXA, is that the aerospace community, with its engineering talent, its scientific capabilities, and willingness to pioneer new technologies in critical aerospace areas, can be a catalyst for moving hydrogen more quickly from concept to full usage across all modes of transportation. So I'm going to be talking about federal initiatives in hydrogen. I will say at the outset that there are a number of federal laboratories like Oak Ridge and NIAR, et cetera, that are also working in hydrogen, but I'm not going to go into those. That's just such a deep topic area. If you would like me to cover those later, maybe in another session or whatever, I'm happy to do that. But I want to talk now specifically about federal programs that have just emerged that can have a significant impact on what we're doing. So let me go to the next slide. Okay. So there are a number of administrative and congressional actions in the field of hydrogen that have come about. Many of these either concurrent with today or recently in the last certainly 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And I'm going to take a few of these apart for you so that there's a good understanding that the aerospace community and certainly NASA's own activities in hydrogen can help to increase our knowledge and awareness of what's going on. So primarily, I'm going to talk about 3 pieces of legislation. The first is H.R. 3684. This is affectionately known as the Build Back Better, or the IIJA Act. And this is a $1.2 trillion program. I'll get into the details in a moment. But they've allocated quite a bit of dollars to accelerating the availability of hydrogen in transportation. Other acts that or bills that have come forward, H.R. 5192 came out of the House, Clean Hydrogen and Investment Tax Credit Act. This is still not enacted, but it's been getting a lot of traction. I'll talk about that momentarily. And then lastly, the Clean Hydrogen S1017, the Clean Hydrogen Production Incentives Act of 2021. So let me just go to the next chart here. So this infrastructure bill, which was signed into law just before Christmas, it totals about $1.2 trillion of funding that is to be expended over the next 5 years. And there's a substantial piece of this legislation. I mean, most of it deals with highways, bridges, ports, things like that. But for the first time, we're seeing a significant and concerted legislative effort to encourage the development of hydrogen as a clean fuel for the future. And right now, this bill allocates about $9.5 billion to hydrogen. And that's all modes, or all aspects of production, distribution, refueling stations, things of that nature. And there's a lot going on. This is being managed by the Department of Energy. DOE has been and is in the middle of I'll call it a reorganization. since this bill was passed, the Department of Energy has substantial responsibility for directing funding and encouraging participation of the private sector. This has created over 60 new offices and new agencies within the Department of Energy to focus on specific aspects of transportation, infrastructure, et cetera. And then with the specific hydrogen-related activities, this $9.5 billion, the most of it is allocated to promoting what they're calling regional clean hydrogen demonstration hubs and programs. They issued an RFI in, I think it was February. The RFI responses were due in March. I'm pleased to say that there were about 300 submissions. NEXA, we made a submission because we felt that there were two issues with the infrastructure bill, the IIJA. One was that we didn't feel it emphasized aviation and aerospace sufficiently. So in responding to the RFI, which was basically the DOE asking, the private sector for ideas and information on how to make this program better. So that was one aspect of our submission. It was to say, hey, aerospace, aviation can be a real mover and shaker here. Please, DOE, pay close attention to what is about to happen in the aerospace sector. And the other had to do with innovative technologies that can accelerate hydrogen usage in aviation. So at the end of this presentation, I'll be talking with this group about the potential of using hydrogen carriers such as ammonia, ethanol, and methanol to more cost effectively create hydrogen capacity and supply at airports around the US, Canada, et cetera. So much of this funding, this $9.5 billion, is 50% match funding designed to encourage private funding and investment. At least one of these four hubs will focus on transportation. Hydrogen, of course, has a lot of usage outside of transportation, and but we think that the biggest bang in terms of moving away from fossil fuels and into clean hydrogen, whether it's green or gray or whatever, is going to be it's a must fight for the aviation sector. So this program is a multi-year program. There will be a continuing congressional review of progress, very strong bipartisan support to accelerate hydrogen usage wherever possible. And along those lines, any of you that are on this call that have an interest in accelerating hydrogen usage, please get in touch with Johnny or with us at NEXA, and we're happy to connect you up with others. There's another bill that is still being considered. It was proposed in August. The proposing congressman is on the right, from Connecticut, Congressman Larson. This is a tax credit program that is designed to further incentivize the private sector to invest in hydrogen. And so, of course, this particular bill there's a lot of interest in this bill from, especially from major producers. I'm talking now about oil and gas companies, but also about the big guys who might be developing hydrogen vehicles like General Motors and Ford and even Toyota. It expands the tax credit for electricity produced from renewable resources if they are used to produce clean hydrogen and to create clean hydrogen production facilities. So hydrogen can be produced from electricity in various technologies and formats. This is how you get to green hydrogen. And so this tax-driven legislation should be of interest to many different players. A second bill, which was proposed back in March, and it currently lacks action by Congress, but it has a lot of interest. It's an Production Incentives Act for clean hydrogen. Again, with it's backed primarily by new tax credits, and it defines clean hydrogen as hydrogen produced using an electrolyzer for which the electricity used is produced from renewable energy resources like wind or solar, or it could even be nuclear fusion. So many different approaches to the acceleration of production incentives for hydrogen. You may also be aware of the Aviation Climate Action Plan, which was tabled by the DOT. This is an aggressive plan to meet zero emissions by 2050. There's strong emphasis on sustainable aviation fuel, and hydrogen in this bill is a minor consideration, but we intend to do things to make hydrogen a more prominent feature of the Climate Action Plan. That's part of our strategy as an investor in alternative energy sources, including hydrogen. So you know that because hydrogen it really has an incredible energy density, and it can be used in either liquid or a gas form on aircraft, basically to power flight, electric flight. It can even be used to power flight by burning hydrogen. But the prominent green feature that we are interested in is really hydrogen electric hybrids, things of that nature. Just recently introduced, actually back in February, not even 2 months ago, is the Advanced Air Mobility Coordination and Leadership Act. And this is an overall effort to establish interagency working groups to plan and coordinate efforts in the AAM space. It was tabled by Representative Davis from Kansas, which is a huge state when it comes to general aviation, et cetera. And we're very excited about this effort. It's caught a lot of attention, and it's very good to see federal agencies now beginning to pool their talent and resources. And this would, of course, include the DOT, the FAA, Department of Energy, the DOE labs, even the Department of Defense. So I just want to talk a little bit about FAA and its perspective today on hydrogen. There are many people inside the FAA that are skeptical, some even actually hostile to the concept of introducing and making use of hydrogen for aviation and aerospace flight operation, et cetera. There are concerns about funding, storage, delivery, and safety. In our view, as private sector investors, we are very bullish on hydrogen and believe that a concerted education effort that can be brought to the fore from the private sector to the FAA can help to turn these opinions around and get the FAA to be sort of rowing in the same direction that we are. So the FAA is indeed trying to work with all aspects of the electric vehicle industry, the eVTOL industry. We're very happy to see the positive energies that are coming from the FAA. But I think on hydrogen, there's more work that needs to be done to try to bring more federal momentum, motivation, as well as financial resources to the fore. So aviation and hydrogen, I know there are people on this call that are already involved in the development of hydrogen-powered flight. It's fantastic. We are seeing a new entrant in hydrogen, about one a month. I just got a package this morning from a German company that I'd not heard of before that is intending to build hydrogen-powered flight. And it's really quite exciting to see the dynamism that's coming out of a number of the companies that are currently motivated to move hydrogen for aviation. I was chairman of the Vertical Flight Society Hydrogen Council until a few months ago. And at this time, I think there are about 250 members of the VFS Hydrogen Council. Everybody on that council is totally motivated to solve problems of hydrogen production, distribution, and use in operation in aviation. That group is growing by, I would say, 5 or 10% a month, it seems. And I think that the supply chain will fix itself. We will be able to produce and distribute hydrogen so it's available inexpensively to those applications of aviation. You see some of the images here. You can see small aircraft, helicopters, hybrid helicopters. That's the Piasecki via helicopter, and even ground vehicles at airports. So it's very, very interesting. So a little bit on private capital in hydrogen. I would say that while there are probably less than 10 specific alternative clean energy funds available, there's quite a bit of private capital flowing into hydrogen now. And keep in mind that hydrogen, in a way, sort of competes with electric, solar, wind, and even nuclear technologies. But hydrogen, it's in terms of energy density, I can honestly say that hydrogen is the future for aviation and aerospace. We're very excited by that. So there are a lot of industrial hydrogen investors. You have to look at the oil and gas sector to see what's happening with companies like Shell. Shell has major projects underway in California, working with the state of California, but also with other modalities, and intends to build a hydrogen distribution capability that will expand from the current hydrogen stations in California. There are about 40 of them, I think, 42, all the way up the West Coast, all the way to Washington State and even into British Columbia, so that hydrogen-powered trucks, which are already in use in the port of Long Beach, can do long haul up and down the East Coast. And of course, that's the West Coast. And that's the stake in the ground, so to speak, to bring hydrogen, to the East Coast and everywhere in between. So industrial investors include not just the oil and gas sector, but also automotive companies, Toyota, Hyundai, General Motors, et cetera. They're making big dollar investments. We're beginning to see in aerospace more investment be made by companies like Airbus. And of course, we have a lot of entrepreneurial businesses. And then in terms of hydrogen from the capital market side, as I said earlier, there are a few funds that are being established really over the last couple of years and then into this year that are going to focus on clean energy. But I think there is much more capital formation now coming into specific hydrogen-related things. We see these activities underway with family offices as well as specialist funds that are beginning to emerge this year. So stay tuned. I'll just pause here and ask if there are any questions while I bring up the next set of slides.
Well, that's encouraging as far as the activities, especially as you said, the Shell. I was always worried about that automotive industry has not made, in Japan, it seems to invest a lot in hydrogen, but I didn't see enough progress prior to this in the US. But what you said that the Shell is making that kind of arrangement to have the hydrogen trucks for long haul, that's a very, very powerful statement right there.
Yes, it is. And I was lucky enough, Johnny, I think you were at the VFS conference, were you not?
Correct.
Did you go on the tour that Shell put on?
No, I was not able to attend in person, so I joined the conference remotely. Yeah.
I was fortunate in that years ago, I was actually an engineer at Shell and was able to sort of reconnect with a bunch of people who gave me the inside scoop, I think. Shell is 100% committed to hydrogen production. Of course, Shell is one of the largest distributors of fuels, including safe fuels, to the aviation sector. And of course, while they're eyeing vehicle and heavy truck applications of hydrogen today, they obviously have an eye on aviation, which is really really important.
Yeah, encouraging. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so I'll just jump into the second part, which is it's a project that we are investing in, and this is just illustrative, I think, of what possibilities may exist. So we have an investment in a technology that reforms methanol, which is basically alcohol, into pure hydrogen, and it's a device, it's a machine that can be scaled and can produce kilotons of hydrogen on demand. And the intent of this business is to tap methanol because it's a fuel stock that is widely available today. You can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it at your pharmacy, you can buy it at your gas station. If you put fluid into your windshield cleaner, that fluid is largely methanol, which what this basically means is that there's an opportunity to bring hydrogen more quickly into the aerospace sector than by waiting for hydrogen production and liquefied distribution, for example, through new pipelines that have to be built, or new major production facilities with the requirement for distribution. So because methanol is widely available, storage is widespread. Methanol is used in everything from manufacturing. It fuels race cars. What's interesting about methanol is that let's say a gallon of methanol contains more hydrogen, reusable hydrogen, than a gallon of liquefied hydrogen, cryogenic hydrogen, and it's chemistry. When you mix methanol with plain water, you're able to extract multiple hydrogen H2 molecules through the process. And this little diagram here shows the difference between, on a per volume basis, methanol extraction of hydrogen from liquid hydrogen use. And of course, methanol can be trucked with conventional tanker trucks. Here's an example. The hydrogen carried in a truck shown here on the left would require 21 truckloads on the right of gaseous hydrogen to be the equivalent of what's on the left. So distribution is the Achilles heel of liquefied or gaseous hydrogen today, and it's going to stay that way for probably a decade or more. So my point on methanol is that this is a technology capability and feedstock that can bring hydrogen much more rapidly into use with aviation, because you need to get hydrogen to airports, basically. It has to be available, it has to be in quantity, and it has to be cost effective. So this is sort of the concept of being able to use existing trucking, et cetera, to move methanol, which can be reformed into hydrogen right at the airport, perhaps even alongside the aircraft. So there's some cost issues here, just to point out real quick. The current cost at the proverbial commercial pump in California for a kilogram of hydrogen is about $15.50 per kilogram. And just so you understand, it takes about 4 kilograms of hydrogen to fill up a car like the Honda Mirai. And then that vehicle has maybe a 300-mile range. So it's somewhat equivalent to the cost of filling up a car with regular gasoline. But hydrogen can be produced much less expensively under the right circumstances. And the example on the right-hand side here, this is sort of the high end of where we are. We think that with the technologies available through methanol reformation, hydrogen can be produced at between $3 and $5 per kilogram. And that's very important from the standpoint of fuel costs. I will say that hydrogen today in volume is produced using natural gas. This is where, you get into the big questions about whether you are, producing green or gray methanol and solutions. But there are technologies that are just around the corner that can produce green methanol for these prices, and we're excited to be part of that. I just want to say that there are two ways of getting methanol into electric powered flight. One is by producing hydrogen and then using hydrogen tanks that would go right on an airplane. So this is the concept that most of the aircraft developers are using today. The other way to do it is you can reform hydrogen on the aircraft if you have the reforming technology. So in effect, you fill an airplane that has a battery with methanol, and that methanol in flight is converted to hydrogen and then to electricity. And the concept behind hybrid hydrogen powered flight is that the batteries that are involved are augmented. So in effect, what you're doing is you're able to charge the batteries when the aircraft is in flight, and you're able to charge the batteries when the aircraft is parked on the ground. So the major power use is augmented, obviously, mostly by batteries moving forward. So anyway, we can report on the status of this project. We intend to do that and to keep the industry informed. This is my last slide. So I am going to drop the slides and ask if we have any questions.
Well, go ahead. Well, while people are thinking about the questions, we have looked at and discussed for our transformative vertical flight working group, especially working group 4, about the future possibility of hydrogen. And for a while, we have always been challenged by the problem you point out, the logistics, because when we look at our mission use cases, we're talking about response to wildfire, disaster relief, response post disasters, and humanitarian aid, and so on. Many of the missions that we talk about, it is difficult enough to find a place to charge your eVTOL, let alone finding hydrogen to refuel our system. So we have always had this challenge that we don't know what to do and how to solve the problem. But as I said at the beginning, that lately I start to see much more activities and progress made in this front. And what you put on the table are, first part of the presentation, it's encouraging to see the kind of government and private sponsorship and support and engagement. Money talks. It's always important to have some financial support to make things happen. But it's even more interesting to me that the ability to use carrier media like methanol and so on, which is less challenging. It's already readily available. Transportation network is available, and the ability to convert that into hydrogen on demand, either on the airplane or on the ground next to the airplane. That's just amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you see is the more likely way to use that technology, I would say?
Yeah, so let me first just comment that unless vehicle developers are confident themselves that hydrogen is going to be available cost effectively, that in itself will slow down the implementation of hydrogen powered flight everywhere. So it's very important, I think, for our industry to see that it's not going to be hobbled by the lack of inexpensive, readily available hydrogen at airports. If we can solve that problem first, then we should see a much greater effort and emphasis on designing, certifying and then manufacturing hydrogen-powered vehicles in the industry. So this methanol technology, it's not the only one. There are other ways to reform hydrogen. Just to be clear, methanol is we like methanol, but ethanol and even ammonia, if you're brave, are excellent hydrogen carriers. I will say that the IIJA, the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Jobs Act, mentioned hydrogen 178 times. And to put that into context, I mean, that's a big bill, right? It's 2,700 pages, but that same bill only mentioned charging stations 100 times. So there's so much emphasis.
That's very interesting, Don.
Yeah, well, that's how to look at a 2,700 page bill, we had to use a search function first just to figure out what was in it. But it also mentions liquids that are hydrogen carriers, and methanol was one of those that was mentioned multiple times in that bill. So it's time now for this industry to explore the acceleration of hydrogen availability, and any ways that can be done has got to be good for our industry. Stephen, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi, Michael. I do. Stephen Tibbetts from Ziva Aero. Can you drill down? I think it says slide 2, but the area of the graph that shows pure methanol and then methanol plus external water. Could you explain that in a little more detail?
Yeah, and rather than pull it up, I could just explain to you that, well, maybe I can pull it up. Hang on a second. Just a second here. I think I have to close something out. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, stand by. Share. Okay, I'm going to page up.
Yep, there you go.
Oh, sorry, it was the other slide. So hold on just a second. Now that I know how to do it, I think I know how to do it. I have to go there, and go. That.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the scale on the vertical is kilograms of hydrogen per cubic meter. So the way the methanol reformation process works is that the device that we have requires that methanol be mixed with water, and the ratio is 2 parts methanol to 1 part water. And then the reformation process itself, which uses a patented membrane, is able to recover the hydrogen contributed from both the water and the methanol. So it's a more efficient way. It's just the way our technology works. So you buy methanol and you dilute it, basically, and then you reform it into hydrogen. So that's what this graphic shows you. So you get more, if you like, more energy density out of the process by mixing the methanol with the water. It has to be a fairly precise mix, 2 to 1, basically. But that's how it works.
So do you pull water out of the air, or are you just adding liquid water?
We're adding distilled water.
Okay.
Yeah. Which, of course, that adds to the cost because distilled water is, we want the water to be as pure as possible. The reformer can handle water that's slightly contaminated, but the preference is just to use distilled.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Are there any other questions?
So do you, by adding the water, sounds like a good cost-effective way to increase the energy, so the power density. But do you envision adding water, have a water tank? If we try to do this process on the airplane, do you advise to dilute the water 2-to-1 before you fill into the airplane, or have a water tank and the methanol tank separate?
So the best way to do it if you're onboarding the methanol is to dilute it first. And then, so, methanol is mildly corrosive to aluminum. So there are, new materials needed for fuel tanks. We have one project underway today with the manufacturer. I don't want to disclose who that is right now, but they're working toward onboarding methanol and being able to reform the chemical into hydrogen that then goes into a fuel cell to convert the hydrogen to electricity. So it's possible to do that, but you want to just keep in mind that you need batteries through this entire concept because you need that extra power in order to have an eVTOL take off or do any special maneuvering, perhaps hover and land, things like that.
Do I understand what you're saying, that with hydrogen system, it's sufficient to, is it sufficient to sustain cruise flight? The energy, the power rate, the output.
Yeah, so the reforming process and the configuration that would go into an eVTOL, the details of that are still being worked out. I will tell you that the reformer technologies that we have today, the machinery, this is a capability that's currently being used under license to the trucking industry in Europe and elsewhere, as well as even in shipping here in the U.S. So this is not TRL level 3 stuff. This is stuff that is currently, in use today. The reforming machinery that has been developed for the trucking industry is not applicable to putting on aircraft. They didn't worry about weight. So there's an engineering task associated with designing an onboard reforming capability that is light enough to burn methanol, obviously, and to produce hydrogen in a hybrid configuration to sustain flight longer. Our view is that you can extend an eVTOL from, let's say, 200 miles to as much as 700 or 800 miles of range with a properly configured methanol reformation configuration on board the aircraft.
Do you, so based on what you see activity interest so far, what do you see more interest or more promising? Reforming at the airport and fuel hydrogen airplane, or have the reformer onboard airplane? What's your take on these two possibilities?
Yeah, so from an investor standpoint, we have the sense that reforming methanol at an airport and producing hydrogen that will be compressed or liquefied for use on an airplane is probably the larger of the two opportunities. But both are exciting. I would say both are very exciting. And if
the same infrastructure or network can support either or use, it really not exclusive from each other. Seems like 80% of the logistics are the same for either way.
It is, because we can move methanol very inexpensively. It can be stored at an airport. It's actually a very safe fuel. It's less flammable than Jet A. I mean, all these fuels are toxic. I wouldn't, I mean, methanol, you don't want to drink methanol, that's for sure. Ethanol is a different story. But ethanol goes into your booze, but methanol is not for, internal consumption. But either of these approaches, I'm expecting that we will see dozens of onboarding development programs over the next 5 years using this technology, and we're welcoming anybody that wants to adopt this technology for flight. Please come forward and let's talk. We're able and willing and enthusiastic about making the technology inexpensively available to aircraft developers and others.
You mentioned 5 years. Is that when you think the practical, realistic, like eVTOL can be commercially ready for use?
Well, firstly, I'll say this, that over the next 5 years, we expect to have several hundred airports fully up with methanol reformed hydrogen in gaseous or liquefied form at these airports. So just that process, and that's our funding, along with probably some DOE funding, Department of Energy funding, to bring that quickly to into the mainstream. And then as an engineer, I can say that it would be fun. I don't do this anymore, but I think it'd be fun to have the challenge of converting a 500-pound hydrogen reforming machine that we have today to a 100-pound version that would have even more energy output. So that's an engineering task that what engineer would not want to have the fun of doing that, right?
Exactly. I mean, it really is encouraging, mainly, as I mentioned earlier, that for public service missions, one of our challenge is the fueling or charging infrastructure. Where the missions are, you don't know where it could be. I mean, how do you get the resources over there or energy resource over there? But the second part is that many of the missions, we look at what the eVTOL can do. We thought, okay, we can do this mission. We had to come back to the base. We have a small operating radius, that 40, 50 miles. And then, okay, that's a limitation of some of the eVTOL. We had to come back and recharge, refuel or something. If hydrogen, especially this kind of technology, can extend the range, as you mentioned, that not only may potentially solve the energy supply logistic problem for public services, but also increase the vehicle mission capability big time. That is where I kind of log on to what you are doing. You say, wow, there's a very promising ongoing development right here.
It is. I mean, I think that this is an area where aerospace, with our talent and capabilities across all of the aerospace disciplines, has the ability to bring this technology more quickly. And by the way, there's a company whose name escapes me that's building a methanol reforming device to recharge Teslas. So a Tesla will get you 300 or 400 miles, but with a reformer on board the car, that could extend the range to 1,000 miles quite easily. And
wow.
So there's development going on there. There's probably a lot of development we're not even aware of.
Well, that's good news, because I'm still waiting for my Cybertruck. I'm one of the crazy guys who ordered one. But now, if I can get one of those and put it in the back of the pickup truck, now I can go East Coast to West Coast.
Indeed.
One of the pushbacks on hydrogen itself is the their range of explosivity, right? It's like 4% to 85% or something like that. I don't know the exact numbers. That's probably the biggest fear I have, is that, you know, it's got a huge range of potential to explode. And what that means is that as a percentage of the air, it's got a very wide explosive range, as opposed to other fuels like gasoline. If it's in the environment, it actually has a much smaller range of ignition. So you want to
Stephen,
comment on that?
Yeah, it's a really important point. You may recall, you might have been on the Vertical Flight Society hydrogen call about maybe 6 months ago, when we had Charlie Myers speak. He was with the Massachusetts Hydrogen Council, and they had done fire testing of hydrogen that leaks, you know, to understand better the safety properties. And the one thing that I recall from that conversation and the demonstrations that we witnessed was that if there's a hydrogen leak, hydrogen is so light that it goes straight up, and it doesn't. It's unlike, say, jet fuel, where if you have a leak, it's going to spill on the ground, creating a fire hazard. The hydrogen just escapes with momentum, and gets away from the leak, goes into the atmosphere, and then quickly dilutes. So that's just one example that I recall. But I think more work needs to be done, definitely. Larry, do you want to get on here and say something?
Sorry, got to click all the right buttons here. No, for my days in the fire business, I think you're exactly right. There are going to have to be provisions built into the design to deal with the explosive range on the hydrogen. But the good news about the hydrogen, with the molecular makeup of it, is it does dilute very, very quickly. So it's almost like the best thing you can do is release it and let it dilute out at that particular point overall. And there's also some pressurization and heat range things that you have to attenuate and you have to deal with as well. We're working on a recovery system for one of the hydrogen VTOLs.
Are you? Very good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great, Larry. Thanks for that.
That's good news. Yeah. See, ask we shall receive, and even though there's still a few challenges, but it is overall, from my observation, it's becoming more promising and probably more near medium term feasible technologies coming on together, and with government private capital investment. I think that's a formula for success. So I'm super excited about what's going on.
Well, the good news about our submission, when we responded to the RFI, was that we actually got a quick response from the DOE. That, in my view, is very promising.
Yeah.
So having DOE as an active investor and participant in that concept, and this is where the aerospace sector can really contribute.
Yeah.
It's not just. I mean, it is that we know as an industry, aerospace industry, we're more attuned to safety issues than any other sector, really. And I think we have the mechanical, electrical, structural knowledge that other sectors don't have, and we can help the other sectors by becoming more directly involved in innovation in hydrogen production and use.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that for sure. Well, Michael, this is amazing and great work on your part, and I think I'm looking forward to rapid advancement in this field. I'm looking forward to put one of those things in the back of my pickup truck somewhere. Just before we let everybody go, just a quick mentioning. There's a very interesting, well-done reporting on 60 Minutes about eVTOL. And one of the front portion is Anderson Cooper actually jumping to one of our members, the lift aircraft Hexet, single person eVTOL. Anderson Cooper actually got trained probably less than an hour, and he flew that machine. It is a pretty encouraging and very nicely done report. So anybody haven't seen it, you can just Google search on the YouTube that 60 Minutes eVTOL, it will come up. So again, well, thank you everybody for attending. And Michael, great presentation. Some of our folks let me know that they have conflict, they couldn't attend today, but fortunately we had the recording, so they will go back, and so you might get additional inputs and questions from other members. So again, thank you so much. This is a great session.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, see you guys.